Yo, what is up guys? So the version 3.4 characters, animations, and kits are out, and I gotta say that if you haven't seen them for yourself, then you're missing out on a lot. And so today I'm gonna be doing a little bit of a different video, and I'm gonna be ranking all of these characters and talking about their kits and how I feel about them. Okay, so first off, let's get the 3.3 characters out of the way, and let's start with Hyacine. Hyacine is a wind remembrance healer who actually does an impressive amount of damage, functioning as a sub DPS on practically any team you put her on. She's an amazing addition to castorice and mighty teams, comfortably sustaining them and allowing you to play around their mechanics. Due to Mighty and castorice getting more value out of their skills, the higher their current and team's HP is, respectively. And although Blade's follow-up attack mechanic isn't based on how much HP he loses, she's still able to influence it if you have her light cone, which consumes a small amount of allies' HP before healing them. So if you're planning on investing on any of these teams, it's highly recommended that you go for Hyacine's signature. All in all, I would say she's the near must pull if you have castorice on your account, and then a very good pull if you have Mighty or Blade instead. She's definitely a good pickup if you don't have at least 2 premium sustains yet. And with that, she's gonna be going right into the A tier for me. And now quickly on to Cipher. She specializes in debuffing enemies and then nuking them if you play around her mechanics right. I'm not gonna bore you with the details of her kit, but she basically just takes a tally of the damage you do to enemies, and then she stores that up and she can release it with her ultimate when you want to. So she has the potential to do a ton of damage if you save her ultimate and then release it at the right time. What I will say about her though is that the only teams I can think of where she's like a necessary addition is an E0 Akron team, because you need 2 other nihilities, and Jiao Zhou along with Cipher seem like the best option right now. On a Feixiao team, she does seem to be better than Topaz, but not so much to the point where you'd pull for her as a Topaz replacement, and in any other team in general, she's just okay. Kind of like how Ruanmei is right now outside of Break. They're great, but not necessary. And with that said, I am going to be moving Cipher into the C tier, because another thing that does come to mind is the state of Silverwolf right now in the beta, as she has the potential to actually overthrow her and the team that I mentioned earlier, the E0 Akron team. The reason why I don't want to give a definite answer on this is simply just because we're still in V2 of the beta and we don't know what Silverwolf is going to be looking like at the end of beta. Although considering that most of you probably already have E0 Silverwolf probably just laying around on your account, I'd recommend that you just stick with that, and I have a feeling that she'll be in a good spot even after the beta ends. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the 4 characters that are getting buffed, and since we're on the topic of Silverwolf, let's just go straight into that. So Silverwolf's main changes was that her ult is AoE now, and her skill also applies the weakness of the first person on the team. If the enemy already has that weakness on them, then she'll just apply a random one that exists on your team instead. So Silverwolf's ultimate now gives a 45% defense reduction to all enemies on the field once you use it. And with Sweaty Pearls on top of that, that's looking to be a 61% defense reduction, which already puts characters like Feixiao at 100% defense reduction. Which is actually perfect, because now you don't have to burst down one enemy, you can just apply your defense reduction on all of them at once. And if you're running somebody like Hyacine, she can be doing some passive damage as the other enemies are debuffed. Before these buffs came around, Silverwolf was probably only like good in Apocalyptic Shadow, but now I bet she's gonna be good in both MOC and Pure Fiction, as she's gonna be able to debuff all the enemies at once and you can just do a stupid amount of damage. Though right now, since things are not finalized, I'm going to be putting her in the B tier. I feel like putting her in the A tier, but we're gonna have to see what she's looking like at the end of beta. Though if I had to go off of what we had right now, I would probably put her in the A tier. She's making her comeback in this game and she's looking to be the best character out of all the ones that are gonna be buffing in this patch. Yeah, I'm just gonna put her in D tier. Jingliu is probably the only character on this list that's gonna be in D tier, and it's for a very good reason. So the changes she has is that they made her HP scaling, and now she gets a ton of crit damage when she consumes HP from allies instead of it not doing anything like it did before. But the problem with Jingliu is that she always had a very high floor and a very low ceiling, which is not good as the game has expanded quite a bit since she released, and even Blade is aging much better than her right now. Her switch from attack scaling to HP scaling does help her quite a bit, and her stack generation is much better. You start with 3 stacks now once you enter the transmigration state, but it just seems like it's not enough for her and she's not doing as much damage as you'd want her to. Not to mention the characters that you're gonna be using her with, Sunday, Tribi now, you're probably just gonna want to use them on somebody else like Castorice or once again even Blade, because right now he's just way better than her. Jingliu is just not a character that gets better as the game goes on. She's very self-contained, and so even though we have a lot more supports like Tribi that are helping with HP scaling, she doesn't benefit from it as much as the other characters do. And now moving on to Blade. Blade has aged really, and I mean really well. The major thing that revitalized Blade and brought him back from the dead was the fact that he changed his split attack and HP scaling to just pure HP scaling, which makes him work with Tribi now and makes him really good. On top of that, unlike Jingliu, he's actually very flexible and not self-contained, and so he benefits more from newer characters than she does. But the main thing that makes me put Blade above Jingliu is his E1. And now I know what you might be thinking. That's a whole ass Eidolon above Jingliu. Why should I be considering that? But the thing is that Blade is now on the 50-50 loss pool, so getting his E1 is actually relatable. And what his E1 does is it increases his enhanced basic attack damage based on the tally of his HP that has been lost. So it's practically doing what it does to his ultimate to his enhanced basic attack. And the one thing that you do need to take note of is that his ultimate does clear the tally. To give you an idea of how good and decent Blade is right now, at E1 with a good team like Sunday and Tribi, he's actually contending with E0 Saber and even beating her at times. At E1, his basic attack does some really good damage, his ult does really good damage, and we also have Hyacine who can speed up his stack generation, allowing him to do more follow-up attacks and do even more damage. The one thing that they do need to do right now to Blade is to also change some of his other Eidolons like his E2, which only gives him crit rate right now, which he doesn't really need because you have people like Sunday and he himself already starts out with a lot of crit rate. And because he's on the 50-50 loss pool, if they buff his Eidolons, people will be able to get stuff like E2, maybe E4, and that would be really good if those Eidolons are as strong as his E1 right now. His E6 is still pretty good, but I don't know. I was expecting them to change his follow-up mechanic to be something like My Days, but I guess it's still fine right now because of Hyacine and her light gun. Okay, moving on from Blade, and we have our last character that will be getting buffed in 3.4, Kafka. The main changes that they made to her was that they made her buff dot damage, but that depends on the effective hit rate of your allies. And then now her follow-up actually procs dots, along with it being able to be triggered with any attack and not just basic attacks right now. Because of the way a dot team works and because of Kafka's role in a dot team, it never actually really did bad damage. Don't get me wrong, these changes are amazing and she definitely did need them. And oh yeah, I actually even forgot that her skill now actually procs dots on all 3 targets and not the main target, so that's really good for blast content. So yeah, back to what I was saying. The thing that Kafka really needs right now is another teammate to enable. So Black Swan is pretty good right now, but I'm sure all of you have probably heard about a physical dot character that's gonna be releasing soon. And obviously this is a 3.4 character, so there's no doubt about them being strong. And because Kafka is a dot enabler, her strength actually just depends on her teammates. So even in 5.x and 6.x, as long as they show some attention to dot characters, Kafka will practically always be good unless they release a better dot enabler than her. But I feel like that would be quite unlikely because of just how popular Kafka is. And so yeah, with that said, I'm gonna be putting her in the B tier. Okay, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna be putting her in the A tier because of the potential that she has. Once again, as long as they release strong dot characters, because she's a dot enabler, she's gonna be strong. So she has huge potential for the future. So let's move on to the new characters. Obviously gonna be leaving Phainon for last. And so yeah, let's start with Archer. Archer is gonna be going straight into the S tier. He does some really good damage and he also brought Sparkle back to life. But the main reason that I'm putting him in the S tier is because he's a free character. And it seems kind of criminal how he's a free character with how good he is. The only major problem I see with Archer is that he's kind of greedy. He needs one specific requirement, which is Sparkle. Although Sunday does kind of generate more skill points than Sparkle, but you need skill points in like mass. And so if you're somebody that already has Sparkle and she's probably just lying around not doing anything, Archer is gonna be her savior. Now obviously he is a single target DPS, so he's not gonna be doing well against pure fiction, but he's definitely gonna be good in stuff like Apocalyptic Shadow and MOC in general. So yeah, because he's free, that also makes it so that you only have to go for his Lycone. Now his Eidolons do make him more comfortable, but unlike other limited characters, the Fate collab characters Eidolons aren't actually, as significant to their kit as you might think. And I think that's probably because they're not gonna be coming back, although their banners are probably gonna be lasting longer than normal. But yeah, if you really like his animations and his playstyle, then getting his early Eidolons might not be too bad, but they're not necessary at all. All you're probably gonna need for him is just Sparkle, and that's it. Okay, before we move on, this list is kind of looking a little bit skewered because there's nothing in the middle, so I'm just gonna move Cipher up here. And then, okay, I'm probably gonna just, put Hyacine in the middle here. I have high hopes for Silverwolf. She's looking really, really good, and Hyacine is not needed. Silverwolf is gonna be like really good for a ton of teams if she gets out of beta alive. And along with Cipher, I think I should probably also move Blade up and just put him behind her because he also has some really good potential. Okay, so Jingliu's position doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna move her to C tier, and I'm gonna remove the D tier. She's still like kind of like the worst character out of everyone here. So yeah, she's definitely at the bottom. Okay, now let's move on to Saber. Saber. I am thinking of putting Saber, probably around here, I think. To me right now, Blade is kind of better than Saber because of how accessible he is. He's on the 50-50 loss pool and a lot of people probably already have him. The thing about Saber that does put her ahead in this list is the amount of potential that she has. Saber has a very, very high ceiling, and that's because of how her ult and energy regeneration works. So each time a teammate uses an ultimate, she actually gets some stacks, and those stacks increase the amount of energy she gets when she uses her skill, which actually makes it possible to get like a one-turn ultimate at certain points in the battle if you do want to do that. And so yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Her ultimate also is bounce, so it has some really good potential in MOC if you've like killed all the add-ons and it's only the boss remaining, and also in Apocalyptic Shadow because bounce attacks do a stupid amount of toughness damage. Okay, now in general, I wouldn't really recommend Saber. All I'd say is that you should, just go for like E0 or something, since they're probably not gonna be coming back again. her an archer, and so yeah, it'd be good to have that on your accounts. But meta wise, I don't really see her as that good of a character. She has some decent potential with like future characters because of how her kit works. But compared to somebody like E1 Blade, as I said earlier, he does seem to be doing a bit more damage right now. And also because of the fact that Phainon and Anaxa exist, and Anaxa is really good right now. He's very cheap, he does a ton of damage, and he's good in practically everywhere. And Phainon is Phainon. If you know exactly what you're doing, she's gonna be pulling ahead of a ton of DPSs. And so yeah, there's a ton of win DPSs to choose from. Blade, a ton of people are already gonna have, and so he's just gonna be comfortable to pick back up and use. Phainon is gonna be good for the really sweaty ones who know exactly what they're doing, and Anaxa is just amazing all round. Saber just seems like a very good and general option that'd be good in MOC and Apocalyptic Shadow. I don't think she's that good in pure fiction. And so yeah, I'm just gonna be pulling for her for the sake of collection because she's not gonna be coming back. Because compared to the other 3 win DPSs right now, she looks okay. That being said, we are still in V2 and she might end up being like insanely cracked at V5. So we have to wait and see, but for now, I think this is where I'm gonna be putting her. And now we have the most interesting one of all, Phainon. So Phainon is a physical destruction character that specializes in taking buffs from teammates and then going into his ultimate state, in which he retains all those buffs, not allowing them to count down or go away, and using them up for the entire duration of his ultimate. To give you guys an idea of how good this is, he brought people like Tingyun and Yukong back into the meta. Yukong's main problem was the fact that her buffs did not last that long, and at the same time, they were hard to time and keep up throughout an entire battle. But because Phainon retains buffs and keeps them for the entire duration of his ult, you can just use Yukong's powerful buffs and not have to worry about uptime issues. That being said, his kit does kind of tie him down a little bit because of how his ult works. So his ult consumes a set amount of AV, which makes it impossible to, action advance, high speed, high-tech zero cycle shenanigans. You guys know what I'm talking about. And because of this, a lot of people are complaining about how his ultimate works. And the complaints are definitely valid because he can kind of get screwed over quite a bit in the future, simply because his floor is really high but his ceiling is low with how his ultimate is. So he's not gonna be like Jingliu, as bad as Jingliu, but it's not really good right now. And surprisingly enough, his damage right now is comparable to the rest of the 3.x cast. Even though it might look absolutely insane for some of you that have seen his gameplay, it's actually not all that when you actually calculate it and put it into perspective. And also his MOC is really buffing him, so yeah. The community is actually saying that he's gonna be like Firefly all over again, because just like her, his damage looks really impressive and amazing, and he does have really good team building options, but his kit in of itself has a ton of issues. If you didn't know, Firefly has a really high floor, but once again, a low ceiling. Part of this comes from the fact that she's a break DPS, which has less to work with compared to something like a crit DPS, but Firefly's kit is also just kind of botched. She still has some remnants of her split, crit, and break scaling, which do absolutely nothing for her damage, and she also doesn't have her own personal break multiplier compared to Boothill and Rappa, with Rappa also having a higher super break multiplier on top of this. If they weren't gonna give her break, then they might as well have just made her super break higher than the other two. But oh well. Phainon's kit also restricts him, making him easy to build and play with the trade-off that Phainon's kit also restricts him, making him easy to build and play with the trade-off of having a fixed AV consumption on his kit, which screws over zero cycle runs in non-shield content and completely screws over Apocalyptic Shadow for obvious reasons. Some are saying they should just remove the AV consumption from his ultimate, which seems kind of broken to me, but is still feasible. And others are proposing a solution like Feixiao's ultimate, which is split with less AV consumption for each ultimate. Now, one thing to take note of is a future teammate that could be tailor-made for him, being able to affect him whilst he is in his ultimate state. But it would be better if his kit was more contained so he doesn't rely on that character too much when his shield content is gone. The one thing that bothers me is that his entire kit was designed to play around him, making full use of buffs and not allowing them to count down or go off whilst he's in his ultimate state. And as such, I'm worried about the route like the Feixiao one I mentioned earlier, because if we take Yukong for example, if his ult duration is swapped out for more ultimates and less or no AV consumption at all, then her synergy with him will probably just die cause her buff uptime is really bad, and she'll go back to the state she was in the meta. In my personal opinion, the easiest way to go about buffing him is to just make his ult not consume any AV at all. It might sound unreasonable, but it's not actually all that serious when you consider what you're missing out on during his ult duration. You can't use characters like Tribi or sub DPSs cause they're just not gonna be able to do anything, with the exception of Cipher cause she actually still does take the damage that Phainon does into consideration, and at the end of his ultimate you can use her as backup damage if he doesn't do enough damage to finish up the enemies. So she actually has some really interesting synergy with him. But back to what I was saying. Units like Castorice have supports like Hyacine, and surprisingly Hyacine does do like 1/3 to half of the damage Castorice does, which is really amazing. But someone like Phainon won't be able to make use of characters like her because of how his kit works. And so with that said, right now, I strongly believe that at the end of the beta he's gonna be probably like around here or something. And I also do feel like he is much better than Saber right now for sure. But his kit definitely does need some reworking to do. But since this is my tier list, I'm just gonna be putting him up here. Oh wow, this this looks really cool. It's like both of them are, you know, fist bumping or something. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot one last thing for this list. Now the list is complete. Oops. Yeah, now the list is complete and looks absolutely perfect, don't you think? Okay, but all jokes aside, this is what my final tier list is gonna be looking like. And so yeah, with that said, do make sure to tell me what you think about this list, which characters are okay and which ones need to be changed. And also do tell me what you think about Phainon specifically and what they should do to make him feel much better and also improve his longevity. And with that said, I'll catch you guys on the next one.